Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Saga and we are at the episode 8 of Legacy Podcast, and today we have a special guest, and this time we have someone who has an experience in a field where not many players wander, and that will be none other than Zath with his expertise on chromions and related to the PvP department, and they have a very big role in terms of trying to give feedback for Crema and Temtem in general as well to make the game a better place to be. So how are you doing today, Zath?
I'm doing good. And thank you for having me on the podcast.
No problem, Zath. It's great to have you here. So how's your day going today?
I'm doing good. Just relaxing after a crazy week of Dojo Wars, so it's just nice to have that Sunday relaxed day.
It's been really nice for you guys. I can see that you guys have 2 dojos now as part of the Dojo Wars. Must be feeling really nice, right?
No, it does. It feels really great. I'm very happy with how we played this week. We made it to 3 grand finals. We won 2. Super happy. We played really well. We we ended up with 2 dojos, and that's amazing. Honestly, I couldn't be happier with how we played and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, considering the amount of resources and people required to fight for that and then winning, that is definitely a great, enjoyable experience, I could imagine for sure. Now, let's get into some basics of how you found out about Temtem and stuff like that.
So my I had actually had a friend tell me about it many years ago, back when he first heard about it on Kickstarter. But I never really looked into it until about a year ago. A good friend of mine, she introduced me to the game. She told me she really liked it. She was having a lot of fun, and I picked it up and we played co-op for a while at the start of the game, and I've just been playing ever since.
That's really nice to hear. How was the first playthrough for you? Was it enjoyable?
So I actually started co-op with a friend of mine,
Mm-hmm.
but we were on such opposite schedules that we made it to about halfway through Omninesia before our schedules just fell too far apart. And after that, I basically sat down and just did nothing but play this game until it was done. I actually had a really good time. There's a lot of really cool things about this game. There's a lot of like references to other stuff that I'm really glad I paid attention to. Otherwise, I would have missed them, and I definitely wouldn't have had nearly as good of an experience as I had.
I see. That's actually surprising because the most of the criticism that I hear is about poor quality of the story and lack of coherent lore within the story. Do you think it's valid, or you think that you thoroughly enjoyed through the story?
So I thoroughly enjoyed my time through the story. But the things I found to be really enjoyable were, this was like the story itself, like from start to finish, was not anything spectacular. I'm not gonna say that it was done poorly or that it was bad, but it wasn't anything spectacular. I'm not gonna say this was like the best story I've ever played. That's just not true. But there were a lot of things they put. It wasn't necessarily the story. It was a lot of the things they did. Like they were references. Clearly, there were a lot of references to a lot of different Pokemon things, which I thought was really cool. Like there's a truck outside of, there's just a random truck next to the docks outside of like Brica del Mar, I think it's called. And if you talk to the person there, he'll tell you that uh, he saw something hiding under the truck, which is a reference to the original Pokemon games. There were rumors for years that if you, because there was a truck next to the ship part, that if you could get out of bounds, that Mew was hiding under the truck. There's a lot of small stuff like that that I found when I played through, and I thought it was really cool. But like overall, I can understand that people didn't think the story was that great, or the lore didn't really come together that much, because it was just a lot of stuff like that, where it was, if you know and you saw these things before, um,
It's like a
just kind
great
of like,
Easter egg for those people, right?
yes, that's why I enjoyed the story, because I found a lot of things like that. But I do understand if people weren't too happy with the normal stuff throughout the playthrough, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, I never played the story with that much of a in-depth, kind of thing, because I have not played Pokemon before in terms of competitive and stuff, so I did not know the lore of it much. But do you think, despite the flaws in the department of story, would you still consider the first Temtem playthrough as an enjoyable experience for a new player?
I do, um, and I do think that I spend a lot of time,
Mm-hmm.
especially since they put the Twitch thing up where it shows you who's streaming. A lot of the times, like there's like a lot of people that are streaming, and they're like usually on the first island, and they're playing through, and they're learning the battle system, and they seem to be
Mm-hmm.
having a lot of fun. Um, I think the battle system itself like really gives a good experience the first time you play through the game, because it is very in depth, right? Like understanding hold, understanding stamina management, understanding what kills, not knowing the type chart. Like there's so much to learn in this game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I personally found uh, all the learning and adapting I had to do between not always slotting the best move on because I didn't have the stamina to do it while I was playing. Like I found that to be incredibly fun. It did make it a little bit more difficult though, so it's that is something also to think about.
That is so true. Do you think the endgame island that they are going to add is going to add anything else to the story or fix some of its issues, or you think it's just going to be a completely different thing?
I think we're gonna get a little bit more story. So the game did just kind of
Mm-hmm.
end, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
We
that
got
does.
the little post wrap up,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, due to knowing, right,
Correct.
the four characters that really came out to shine on the last island, we get to see them again in the end game island. I do think we're gonna have some quests and some talk, like some dialogue with them that's gonna wrap up some stuff. And I do think that'll give like a better, almost like the how like almost like an ending to a Pokemon game where it's like, all right, you go and you beat the top four people, and then now you're the new best, right? Kind of like how that, I feel like we're going to get a lot of wrap up like that. It's not going to be a lot. It's just going to be
A
like the
little bit.
nice little, yeah, like you're wrapping a present, right? It's going to be like the tape that holds it together, like that finishes it, maybe like the bow on top, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So, after your first playthrough, how was it like navigating to the existing endgame content at that time? Was it challenging? Because for most people, this is the hardest part in Temtem, that they just completed the story and now they do not know what to do. Like, how did you go for establishing yourself? Because there's breeding, endgame content, a lot of stuff to do, but you never know where to start. So, how did you go around by that?
So I actually watched like around the time I was waiting for my friend so we could play, I was watching a lot of tournament videos
Mm-hmm.
of Temtem, of like endgame PvP and stuff. So I ended up buying a backpack
Mm-hmm.
from Uzi, and I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, I saw you play in a tournament. That's really cool." And then he invited me to Voodoo, where I then started learning how to like play the game. And there were a lot of people there who really were like nice and welcoming to me and really taught me how to play the game. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I was very lucky in that way, that I didn't have to really struggle, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So basically, when you were almost approaching endgame, you were looking at tournament videos, you were looking at guides, you were getting an idea of how the endgame works, and you got in touch with some of the competitive clubs so that you can also have, like whenever you get stuck somewhere, you can easily ask a question and get answered promptly, right? So it was a
Yes.
good learning experience for you. I can see how that went well for you. So you do have a history with PvP aspect of the game. What is your overall opinion on the battle system in Temtem?
So the battle system of Temtem, I do truly think the battle system of Temtem is amazing. It's not perfect. It definitely has some flaws. Otherwise, perfect balance would be achieved, and that's just never going to happen. And you have to just kind of roll with whatever the current patch is, and which is kind of good, right? Because if it was perfectly balanced, I feel like, and they never tweaked it at all, it probably wouldn't be too much fun anymore. Because there'd be no variance. It just, but I do think the system is just great. It's so much fun. I'm over 2,000 hours in the game, and I still find myself loving the combat system every day.
Yep, that would be me as well. I can completely agree on all of that. What do you think about our PvP community? Like, they are very vocal about all the changes and giving feedback to the devs. How do you compare Temtem PvP community to any other monster catcher game PvP community, for example?
So I haven't really been around like the monster tamer
Mm-hmm.
PvP community. I've played a lot of MMOs,
Mm-hmm.
which is also what this is, and most of the time the PvP aspect isn't very focused by the developers. I think that's different here. I think there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of actual effort that goes into it. So they tend to be the people who get the least amount of attention. So they tend to be the loudest, which is fair, right? You got to get your opinions heard. But there is something that the I feel like a big reason that the competitive chat is the way that it is you have so many people who clearly care about this game, right? They're very passionate about it. However, they don't all agree on their issues. So when you have a bunch of passionate people in a room together and they start giving their opinions on things, it tends to get a little heated. People tend to get upset, and that's just that's how humans work, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily think that it's a bad place. I do think it's a place that like they're all good intentions, but sometimes it gets a little heated. But I don't think it's a bad place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Do you think it is beneficial to the game that we have such a vocal community and devs are also listening from time to time and they're implementing changes based on feedback? They even do polls for us to sometimes decide that which change makes the most sense for us.
I I do think it's really good that they are involved with the community and like with like and like trying very hard to understand what the PvP community wants. And sometimes it doesn't get implemented in the best way, but they are moving a lot more towards giving the players what they want, which is very nice. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. But once again, we're all human, right? So even if everybody thought it might have been a good change, right, and it just
Mm-hmm.
didn't end up being that way, I mean, you could have known, but at the same time, we're still the game's not done yet, and even though they're not really planning on any more big balance changes before launch because they're really trying to finish the game,
Mm-hmm.
they are experimenting, and at the end of the day, um, yeah, it would be nice if they got it right every time, but they're trying, and I don't think you can ask for any more than that.
That is true. Stepping outside of PvP at the time of you cementing yourself as a member of Temtem Space, the complaints about the game, I believe, were at a constant, and dislike for Crema was like at an all-time high. Why do you think this was the case at that time? And do
Um,
you and do you think that the game was like genuinely lacking in several aspects and the complaints were justified regarding content?
so to my understanding, a lot of it was like there just wasn't content, which makes sense because the game wasn't done and they were releasing one island at a time, and
Mm-hmm.
so we ended up with some really strange circumstances that wouldn't exist. Um, I'm going to use Volfi as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a long time where Volfi just felt like it was this very strong Tem. It was unchecked. Like Gialis was the Volfi answer, but even Volfi hit good into Gialis at the time, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
you just wondered how you were going to deal with Volfi. And then when you take a step back and you look at the bigger picture, there just weren't any melee Tems out. You had like 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗆, you had Volfi, and Volfi had good matchups into both for the only things that were supposed to beat it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that the melee Tems are out and Volfi is, I don't want to say completely disappeared, but it's a lot less popular than it used to be.
Correct.
And I think that's like a good way to look at how a lot of things were in the game. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, there's nothing to do with the end game, and then you just look at it like, well, we haven't even finished the story yet. How are we going to do end game stuff, right?
Correct.
I think, well, at least it seems from the way the game was released that it felt like 𝗃𝗃 wasn't expecting, and I believe they even said this in the Discord, they weren't really expecting so many players to be playing so often. I think they kind of just expected people to show up,
Play a
play the
little bit.
content, give the content, not the people who play, 8 to 10 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, hey, we want more stuff. And I think that was, I understand why they felt it was generally lacking, and it was because the game wasn't done yet. Still, to this day, it's not done yet. Will it be lacking in a couple months from now? I don't know yet. I don't believe so. I do think the things that they announced and the things that they have talked about with like the seasonal stuff and the seasonal rewards, and not just the battle pass, but like the other stuff they talked about too. I do think we're gonna have a lot of really good stuff going forward for a while. So
That is
I do
completely
think that.
understandable. I'm gonna let you know about some of the complaints that I have listed down here in pointers, and you can give me your opinion on them. What do you say about that?
All right, sounds like fun.
So the first thing that most people were complaining about was basically a lot of awful balance patches. And for a prime example, we can say Slingshot, which at one point was giving like +1 speed, +1 defense, special defense, and it was just very, very hard to get in control,
Yes. So, um, a lot of the awful balance patches are, I feel they're just mostly items more than they're
Mm-hmm.
anything else. 𝗬𝗃𝗃 is an example of a Tem that was just completely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some Tems that are stronger than others. You could say pre-nerf DA Naga was crazy,
Or
regardless of
the
whether you
current,
think it was broken or not.
mm-hmm. Or the current
Uh,
Yowler, you can say cold-blooded.
Current Yowler is a bit of a problem. 𝗬𝗃𝗃 last patch was a bit of a problem. But very rarely is it that. I mean, currently 𝗬𝗪𝗓 is kind of a problem,
Mm-hmm.
but these are not things that hard break the game. They're
Correct.
usually items, like they're very very disruptive items. Old Slingshot,
Current
current
Diabolo.
Diabolo,
Yeah.
the peg top item that they told us about that might be coming to the game. Those are like very very scary things. But they do seem like they brought Diabolo down a little bit. They reverted Slingshot, so I do have or they changed it. They didn't even revert it. They just changed it to its current state, which I think is good. I think current Slingshot's a really really fun item. Might be a little strong on Scunch, but that's, or a couple of Tems it's really good on, but it doesn't break them, which feels really
Correct.
good. I am hopeful that even though they do sometimes put in these things that basically break the game, they did tone down Diabolo from 50 to 40. Maybe they might do something like have it announce earlier, or maybe not be as swingy. I haven't seen what people have requested for feedback, other than some people being very angry about how it flips their matches and say remove it from the game.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, they have 𝗃𝗃𝗃 has shown that they are willing to normally quickly fix some of the, well, mostly quickly fix some of the really big issues, like the Slingshot one you said.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about removal of the 5% radars? Because I think a lot of people were complaining about them taking like 12 to 20 hours depending on how they do it. And so 𝗃𝗃, for now, they just removed 5% radars instead of making any changes.
So the removal of the 5% radars made sense, right? Everyone complained they took too long. And instead of figuring out how they were going to fix that in the moment, they removed them. I don't think that was necessarily the best way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do think it was better than the alternative of leaving them in and having, because there are people who play this game because it is listed as early access, and you don't want to give people too many reasons to just hate your game. And if you got a 5% radar early on, like let's say you got Keanu, because Keanu is a very popular Tem. A lot of people agree the Lim looks really good. If you had a Keanu radar and you were sitting there and you sat there and you didn't have very much time to play, like you could only play like 5 to 6 hours a week. You got your Keanu radar. You tried to play. Maybe you even stretched out your play time to like 8 hours that week instead of 6. You didn't get halfway through the radar. Correct. And that feels bad. And so I think it was better to remove it to prevent more people from having these moments where the game felt unplayable, because that's what it was. Those radars were actually just undoable for anybody who wasn't willing to play just the radar for 20 hours a week, which meant you had to do more because you had to, get the radar too.
Correct.
So I think it was good that they removed them, not like saying it was the best solution, because the new solution is everything spawns at 100% rate. They could have done that then. They didn't. I kind of think they were still getting more information based on like the spawn rates of certain things and how long it did take. Yes, they did have that information for over a year, but they were also still focusing on finishing the game too. So I don't know how much they actually were like looking at all the data they were getting or all the feedback they were getting over that. But I do think it was better to remove them than just leave them in the game for people to get them and just really become unhappy because they got something they wanted but couldn't do the radar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely does make sense. The next question would be, what is your opinion on the game not respecting your time, which is like the prime example would be leveling and TV training, for example. So if you need one PvP team, you have to level and TV train all of it right now, which almost takes like a week if you have limited time to play, I would say. Again, with 1.0, it is fixed already with Temtem Showdown coming up, but until then, it is still a chore, So what do you think about that?
So TV training should be faster. I think the TV's things should be doubled baseline, and if you use I don't remember what the name of the item is. It's been so long since I manually TV trained something. But there's no. There's an item the proteins. They double the TVs you get from an encounter. I think it should have been doubled baseline, and that item should have doubled it again. Just because when you compare it to Pokemon, I believe, get 500 TVs or SVs, or no, they're called EVs in that game, but they're the same thing as TVs here. They get 500. We have to train 1,000. Their formats run 6 Pokemon. We run 8 Temtem, right? So it's just so much longer when you compare it to anything else, or when you compare it to that. Leveling will be getting faster, and I'm very excited for that. The community has come up with some very interesting ways of leveling faster. Those are not usually super available to new people unless they know where to look. Thankfully, they are posted in the official Discord and pinned in multiple channels. So if anybody needs to figure that out, please go to comp chat, check the pins. There's the leveling method that PDX came up with, and they were so great for doing that. But
if you just want, it is also there on the YouTube channel itself. You can look up for it. Both East has it as well, and I have the version which takes the least amount of pensions, I guess, because you can just pick up a SciPad for free and get going. So either way, it works. Basically, if you're looking for information for any kind of method, you will find it either in comp chat, general chat pinned, or else on my channel as well if you need.
Exactly. There's so many good resources in this community. That's kind of like the best part about it, is even though sometimes we don't all get along, which kind of makes sense, because right now it's a very PvP focused game with just the current, like, the content that's available to us. But it is nice that we do come together and we do try to give out and help with as many resources as possible.
So most of the changes I said are already being addressed or fixed by 1.0, which is coming out on September 6th. But do you think the wait is too much for the current players to keep playing, or you think they are just enjoying the Dojo Wars and everything else that the game is offering right now?
I think I don't think the wait's going to be too long. Burnout is definitely a thing for the current player base. We have been having our fair share of people who are feeling burned out. We tell them all the time, like, take care of you. We'll figure it out. If we don't compete for a week or two and we all take a break, that's fine. It's healthy. It's not worth it's not worth playing this week to not be here 3 weeks from now because you just never want to play the game again, right? Like it's never worth that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think this is a good time. Like, if you want to take a break, if you need to take a break, because I feel like the rush for when 1.0 comes out, people are going to dump so much time into all the activities coming out, and kudos giving the feathers. It's a good time to do that too if you're looking for something to do. I know so many people are so excited to go do all of the kudos that they can, but I think it'll be good. I think that's a good little thing to just take a break and work on for a little bit. It doesn't take that long, but I do think that that plus a break might actually be really good for anybody struggling to find enjoyment in the game, especially if they've been playing for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it might be.
That makes a lot of sense, but Temtem appears to have a lot of negative reputation right now due to all of the stuff that's going on right now, whether it be Dojo Wars giving a lot of, like a burnout, as you said, to a lot of people, or stuff like... So basically, there's a lot of stuff and a lot of content that's out there to do right now on a weekly basis, but many people are not able to do it. And as I said, so leveling, TV training, radars taking a lot of time right now compared to on full release. It's only going to take 300 encounters instead of 400. This 100 is going to be guaranteed 100%. A lot of stuff basically is going to be, like, you can say 5 times better at 1.0. So do you think this negative reputation that Temtem has right now will be fixed after people get their hands on full release?
I think a lot of it will. Also, a lot of, everything you listed was perfectly was all perfectly valid reasons to be upset. But there's a lot of like lasting things that have happened. Whether it was waiting too long for balance patches or the time between islands, because it's game, like they're developing the game. They don't really know. You don't really know how long it takes. I don't know how long it takes, but I do feel like they did a pretty good job. But overall, I think I think it's getting better. I think it's getting much better. But there was we'll call it the dark times where communication wasn't as nice as it is now. It kind of felt like there was a while where it kind of felt like to the community that they shut their doors and they were really like trying to focus on whatever it is they were doing in their studio. But as of recently, the communication has gotten so much better, and they're giving us like the golden week of information, for example, right, was just so good. And everyone I've talked to is super excited for it. There are questions we still don't know because they didn't give us the full information. We just got like
a sneak peek.
Like a sneak peek. But overall, like, I think going forward, it's going to be better. They're answering more questions. They're just overall, I think it's getting so much better than it used to be. But there will always be people who will say, remember the dark times, and they will always be more cautious when it comes to putting away the negativity, and that's completely
That is true. Yeah, that is true completely. So before we go on to the last part of a few questions I have, I'm going to ask you a current situation question. What is your thoughts on Dojo Wars as a whole, the system itself? Because since the time it was introduced, it has brought a big wave in community. For some clubs, it has been positive. For some clubs, it has been negative. People are going left and right. Clubs are being changed by people depending on their priorities. Before this patch, players had no real motive of being in a club. They were just where they enjoyed with their friends. But after this patch, it's all about winning the dojo wars, and people are getting a priority. They know their priorities, and some people are changing their clubs to be in similar kind of people. Like if you're a Temtem player who plays 12 hours a day, you would like to be in between people who play 12 hours a day as well, so that you don't feel like you're playing too much and your club is not putting much efforts, right? So there's a lot of here and there going on, and a lot of shifting happened, and now it's starting to settle down. But what's your initial opinion on the Dojo Wars format as a whole and the changes that it brought to the community?
For me personally, the Dojo Wars format was good for me. I was in a small club at the time. I was in Voodoo. It basically didn't exist anymore. It was just like 4 or 5 of us that hung out regularly. We basically ended up getting like merging with Tem Team at like when Tem Team was starting. I know we merged with them. I know 𝗬𝗵𝗵𝗴 merged with them. And then we got a couple of newer players, and that was our start to like our 12 to 15 people that we were trying to make. And then we grew over time, and then we merged with Panzers. So now we have a full roster, if that makes sense.
It definitely does make sense.
I've seen the bad. Like there have been some clubs that don't exist anymore. And that like those clubs had really good players. They just couldn't make it work. And so they all went other places. Rest in peace, 𝗂𝗀𝗇𝗵𝗃. But that is sadly how a lot of stuff like this works, though, when there's no real reason to be in a club, and then all of a sudden they throw out not only a group activity, but one that requires so much time, dedication, and people that there are some times where, like in my case, I feel like I just got very lucky of where I ended up, but I very easily could have ended up looking for a club, because in a club of 5 to 6 people, there was no way we were ever doing Dojo Wars.
Correct. Because it does require 11 on Saturday, so you could best get to Friday, and then Saturday you couldn't play.
Exactly.
All right, that is still good to hear from you. Moving on to the next topic, how are you? Like, how excited are you for 1.0 yourself?
I am super excited for 1.0. One thing that I'm really excited for is the soul binding thing. The only question I have about soul binding is I don't remember if they said it, but I hope it doesn't change. I don't think it changes the OT of the Luma.
It doesn't.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But I was trying to get Lumas that I thought were hackable with the hot fixes I have with my friends' OTs on them, so that way I could have those, right? Because I would much rather have their spend the extra, because they already said that the Soulbind was going to be the most expensive item. But I would rather spend that on a Tem that I know I can have, that maybe they don't want, or maybe they have multiple of, or whatever, to have like my friends' OTs on my Tems, rather than my bad radar luck of maybe needing to do that radar 7 or 8 times. I'll just go spend a little extra to guarantee that I don't have to do that.
What is your favorite game mode? Like, they're adding 5 different game modes to the 1.0. What's your favorite one out of those 5?
So I really like I think they called it draft, which is like draft. The random one. That could be fun, but what I'm really interested in is the
layers.
First off, the layers. I'm one of like the 5 people in this game who enjoy running layers. For everybody else who absolutely hates them, I completely understand. Trust me, I really do. But I think the 2-player layer could be fun. I feel like with only 2 people, they could add a lot more like cooperative stuff, reasons to play together. And when you can spike up the difficulty, if they give you the ability to play, like maybe trade Tems or items or, maybe stuff like that, like you could really make that a super fun game mode. I actually think the co-op part of this game is the best part of this game. Because like I said, I played some of the campaign co-op, and I've gone back and played through the story, I think 2 or 3 more times in its entirety with different groups of friends. I love the co-op of this game. I think the battle system of this game works amazing with co-op, in terms of just playing with your friends, and like the communication of like, hey, I'm going to use this on this, so that way you don't each go, oh, I'm just going to go hit this, and then bad things happen. So I think if they give us co-op for anything, that's going to be what I'm looking forward to. Like the battle tower would be cool with co-op. Maybe the draft is a bit too much with co-op, but like the co-op layers, I'm super excited for those two. I always find it more fun when you do content where you have to think with somebody else than when you just
do it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything else you would like to add that wasn't asked so far from your side?
Maybe just like think about how far this came and how it might have felt like a while, but I really don't think it was. I think I mathed it out. I have a good friend of mine who is a GM for Grim Dawn, and him and I sat down and mapped out like how long it take them to make Grim Dawn from Kickstarter to finish, and how long it took them to make from Temtem from Kickstarter to finish. And it was like a difference of actual years. Temtem was shorter. So after talking to him, I was like, this is really interesting. Like they made a whole MMO in the time that they did, and MMOs are the most time intensive thing you can make.
Yeah, complicated. Yeah. And COVID was also there to stop Temtem's progress a bit,
I think COVID was there for like 75% of development time. So I think this is, for the time they spent on it and for all the external, like for everything going on in the world, I think we got a really good game. It's not perfect, right? I'm not going to tell you it's perfect, but I think the quality is good. I think the developers opening up to asking more from the community is good. And I think the game's moving in a good direction. And I really hope, 6 months from now, I'm not eating these words because bad things happen. But I have faith.
I mean, if anything, the Golden Week gave us so much information that is also positive, and it is fixing all the player issues we could imagine of. I can't think the game is going wrong in any way, shape, or form. So I think you are pretty much right there, and the game is looking to go in a very, very good direction for 1.0. And I'm really excited for the same as well, to be honest.
Also, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
No problem, Zath. It was great to have you here with us, and possibly we can have another conversation soon later down in the line in another episode as well, where we can discuss about layers in depth, now that you said that you are a layer enjoyer. So I can definitely have a layer podcast especially for you. Would you like to join for that later on?
A layer podcast. Honestly, you could probably get all of the people who actively run layers in one call, because there's not very many of them.
I guess that's one. 𝗵𝗵𝗶 is one of them, but he's trying to stop his addiction now, I think.
Yeah. I think 𝗬𝗪𝗏 runs a lot too. Luke Leo runs a lot, at least he used to. There's a lot of heavy layerers out there.
All right, I mean, I can try my best to get some of those people in, and we can have maybe like a multi-people layer podcast, not a problem. But again, thank you so much for being around, Zath. It was a great time with you today to have this conversation.
No problem. Like I said, thanks for having me.
That would be all from our side, guys, for episode number 8. We will be catching you guys in the next episode. If you guys enjoy the content, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you are notified of all the new upcoming videos regarding Temtem. I will catch you guys in the next video. Take care and stay safe, guys.